All right, we are recording for chapter 1 of Pastor's Courage. Which, quick reminder, this is essentially, well, it is a biography for the man Sergeant Major Charles Coward, of the British Army during World War II. So chapter 1 has a little bit of an interesting structure to it. It starts first with a POW camp break that he, if I remember this one correctly, he does ultimately try to escape. I might be misremembering because it isn't covered in this, but he is coordinating it. So he has some of this will be explained later, I want to say. He ends up being like a trustee, you could almost say, in at least some of the POW camps he's been in. So he gets to be in certain positions and have certain privileges. One, it appears, allows him to have his room above the common washroom for all the men. And so the book starts with, it's nearly 1 o'clock, and he is looking out his window to see where the guards are and such, because they have planned a break, where the plan is the washroom below him, he just has to tap on the floor, and then the men will break through the roof, because it's just concrete slabs, break through that to move a slab out of the way, and then also brace it so it stays open and things don't slide down and all that. And then they will climb out and go. And this is a plan that he is heavily contributed to, at least as far as he's the one that's been monitoring the troop movements, the guard movements, to know. Not stated who, but someone apparently also went and loosened a spot in the wire so that now these 15 guys can get out and can get out of the building, and then ultimately out of the camp itself, at which point, and he's even ticking off like the whole, okay, it's 15 minutes now, they should have made it sufficiently far out of the camp so that they would be splitting up into their singles or pairs to actually try to get home, if not that, then just harass Germany as much as possible. But the fact that there's been no sounds and he's even seen the guard go by twice does indicate then that they've not been caught. But I think at least there's a moment that's similar to this later, where he's like, wait a minute, this was a good plan. Why am I not leaving too? So he then jumps out and goes. It might be this attempt when we return to that moment in time. But in any case, after that, it's then, okay, so getting introduced to him. And it's somewhat interesting because it talks about how he grew up in Cockney and did serve in the army in India in 1924, I think is what it said. Coming back, he wasn't exactly fit for civilian life in a way, and not in a negative way, just a bit restless, I think is the best way to put it. So he had a job, but then he quits that to try to start his own business. That fails. But he remains active, so he does things like putting on... Okay, sorry. The thing just went to sleep, and I find it curious it's not showing a cover image as it should. Anyway, he remains active doing things like putting on dances, directing shows, composing music, and I think there were a few other things, but he is staying active in the community and even puts it that basically, and it does sound arrogant and egotistical, but I think it's not quite meant that way. He so enjoys himself that everyone else also enjoys him. That he I guess it's more, he's boisterous, like he's outgoing and all that, and he wants to be involved with all this, and it just brings him joy, and that joy is shared with everyone. He also remains active with the army in doing training and such, so it's like, even though he's not an active member, he is active with the army, if that makes sense. I don't know all the distinctions, forgive me. And I don't know if it didn't say he was in the Home Guard or anything like that, but regardless, when 1939 comes about, because of how active he has been, including with the territorial unit, I think is what it said there, he gets called up and is made active in the army again very, very rapidly. And they put him at artillery school in order to train the new soldiers coming up who are going to be sent out definitely to fight. And then when it comes time for him also to be deployed, he asks and even comments like, it's actually really weird because he asked that he get to stay with the men he trained. And the army actually let him do it. Like, they go in advance, all right, we'll send you two in the same unit. It's like, really? This is wartime. You're supposed to ignore everything we want and actually do the opposite of what we want. Not this time. So he ends up there in Calais, and he gets wounded in the leg and in the head while his unit is trying to hide in a cafe. I mean, they not hide. Can't think of it, but they're taking cover there, so they can fire back at the Germans. The Germans ultimately throw a grenade in there that do kill some. He survives. Doesn't get more injured, but certainly those that are around that are still alive have been stunned. So now the Germans are able to come in and capture everyone. They then start a forced march. Well, I'm not actually sure if it, because forced march is a specific term. They start a march at least, though, to have all the POWs go back to Germany. And they are not feeding them, nor are they giving them water. He has a head wound and a leg wound, so he's not doing so well. So he decides, all right, I'm going to try to get out. Gets down. Oh, wait, hang on. Just... Okay, sorry. There is a quote here, but let me finish. So he crawls through a trough at the side of the road, crawls through that past the Germans, because he's being very careful, finds himself at a farm, climbs into a haystack. This is all at night when he wakes up, because he falls asleep, wakes up, finds a Frenchwoman there, who she, once realizing he's a Brit, gives him food, gives him drink, and then tells him to get back up there because the Germans were coming. They had a dog that finds him, and they all kind of laugh at it then. I mean, they do start mocking and tormenting him, but it's, look at this silly Brit that thought he could get away kind of thing. Dump him in a water trough. Then a higher officer comes, because it's like, I'm not sure because I don't really know German, but it sounded like an under officer came, so I guess that would be like the sergeant or something, and then the actual officer came who had no sense of humor, and they made him, that officer made sure he was taken up and moved out of the water trough, still dripping wet, taken back to the marshalling area for the POWs, where now his own men are making fun of him with things like, how'd they capture you, with a U-boat? And things like that. But still, this is basically the start of his life as a POW. 2 days in, he's already made an escape attempt. It failed, but he made the attempt, and this is going to continue for him. So I've got two things I want to read off. One is directly there, but I want to come back to this, about the whole, that initial escape that's being described at the start of the chapter, even though that takes place, I'm not sure when, doesn't state, but would take place later. And all the men that are escaping, and how he's wishing he could go out there and, as they actually, wish them luck and all that, but he can't because they're out there, and he does that in my alert, but it's also unnecessary because they don't know it. But also, if any of them managed the unlikely journey to England, they would be sure to visit a house in Lower Edmonton, London, and say with a grin, "Hello, Mrs. Coward. Charlie sends all his love, and to tell you that he'll be over soon." Which even, I mean, that gives you a sense of the character as well, because I don't necessarily know how some relationships would form in a PW camp. That's hard for me to even imagine, but still the idea that that's not just a letter being written. It's no, I will visit your home and basically give your best to your wife. That's if that is an actual true, that actually true thing there, that they would do that, that's very impressive. Because, I mean, I would imagine that plenty of them would be just, yeah, I'll make a phone call, I'll send the letter, but I want to get, to my own life, versus no, and I said life there, not wife. Though, obviously, they were also, if any of those men were married, I'm sure they want to get back to their wife. But to actually, go and visit, that would seem to me a level of friendship, level of camaraderie that is not always common. But also, I don't really know, never been a POW, doubt I ever would be, never been in any form of the military. So, yeah, I'm guessing there, but it does seem like that is quite a statement. Then the chapter ends on this with the whole, yeah, did a U-boat get you, sir? Good thing the missus can't see her hero now, all that. But here's what it ends with, and that's just like leading into. Who could foretell that this bedraggled specimen, standing miserably rebuffing the merriment of his comrades, while water dripped on his boots, was a born escaper and an incredibly astute patriot. A man to be known in the course of time as the Count of Auschwitz, and who, not content with tormenting the Germans for 5 long years, was to return even after the war and face them as an important witness in their own criminal trials. As I mentioned in the book introduction, he did take part in the Nuremberg trials, the war crime trials, and I'm pretty sure he also got involved later with some trials that came up after, because and this is a little bit of a spoiler, and it's also, I don't remember all the history to it. A lot of the war crime trials did end in one form or another of acquittal. There's multiple reasons for that. If you watch the movie Judgment in Nuremberg, or have seen the play that the movie's based on, it is explained there that immediately attention turned from, okay, we beat the Nazis, now we need to be concerned about the Soviets, about communism. That basically happened immediately. And so there was an interest to very, very rapidly, because the German people were not communist. If anything, they would ally the people, not necessarily the Nazis. We're setting the Nazis aside. We're ignoring them for the time being. Those are the bad guys. The people, not necessarily. But that you don't want to alienate the people. Especially since that also is part of what led to World War II following World War I. But anyway. So they wanted to try to get through things, get through the trials quickly, and not necessarily hold everyone accountable who should have been held accountable, or to full account. And that included some of the leadership concerning Auschwitz and such. Well, what happened later, and I don't remember how much later, was very clever. A way to punish some of the people involved, some of the people who benefited from the Holocaust. But war crimes trials were done. As I recall, and I might be misremembering this, I hope I'm not, somebody had the bright idea, Auschwitz, all those death camps, they were also work camps. The Jews were forced to do labor as slaves, but they were forced to do labor. And they were never paid for that. They sued companies for back pay, and I think he also testified in those trials. I'm not sure, I might be misremembering that. But it's still that World War II, there's so much interesting history there, including after it was done and how things were dealt with afterwards. Because as I said, Judgment, you had the Nuremberg trials, and then it's like, how do you do something? And that was part of it. That was part of it. Because it was, they successfully argued in courts, I'm not sure where exactly, it would have been German courts or international courts, that, yeah, they were unpaid laborers, so you need to pay them. They need back pay, and it worked. My understanding is that did work. It did get a lot of them some sort of reparation for the horrors they were put through, but yeah. Alright, so that was chapter 1. The writing style is a little odd. I'm sure I'll just get used to it. Just how some of the sentence, like that last thing I read from that, was all one sentence. So it's a little long like that. Some of the language I'm going to need to remember, I think is a way to put it. Just it's part of the writing style. That, like what the specific vocabulary is. I mean, it's kind of like when I read through The Lord of the Rings. What's in The Hobbit? I think it was Lord of the Rings. And Tolkien was just using words for shrubbery that I'm not familiar with. Just minor things like that, where it's like, because that's my background doesn't include all that vocabulary. It's just things like that, but it's still fun read. The time jump is really the only thing that I would have any issue with. And you go from him managing this escape to him now to some background, then him actually first becoming a POW. not exactly my favorite move there, but I get it because it is also you want to try to hook somebody right away with this whole current escape. That is a bit more interesting than that first escape attempt of his. And by the way, I think it's multiple times before they actually get him to a BOW camp he tries to escape. So this was one time, and he's got some number more after this, which that'll be in chapter 2. But yeah, so they're trying to do that. So I get that. I get that. Trying to hook you. But it still is. It's just not my style. That's neither good nor bad. It's just not my style. So anyway, so yeah, we'll see you next time with chapter 2, which I know the Iron Cross thing happens early in the story, so it might be in chapter 2. I'm not sure. Find out soon enough. But yeah, see you next time.